So I was recently asked by someone who is entering her semi or retirement years, and she was talking about the fact that because her rent has increased so dramatically, should she consider thinking about living in an RV full time? This is a very complicated question to answer. So I thought today I would share a few ideas for anyone who's thinking about living solo in an RV, especially if you're considering doing so because of finances. So the first thing you need to think about is the type of home that you want and can afford. You know, they make all kinds of RV floor plans and design, and some of them are really well made, and some of them, well, maybe quite not so much, especially if you're considering a used RV, which, if you're going to be looking at cutting down your finances, that's probably something that you're considering. So if you want to explore the idea, one of the things you can do is look at different used RVs. However, when you find one that you like, make sure you hire a mobile RV technician to come out and do a really thorough once-over on the RV. They need to look for things like, has it been damaged because of water? Are there leaks in the windows? Is the heating system working? Does the stove or the refrigerator need repair? They'll also do a propane leak test just to make sure there's no leaks in the system. There's so much for them to look at on an RV, which is very different than if you were purchasing a home. So that's probably the number one thing to look at. And then make sure that you buy one that you can afford, but is in the very best condition possible. When you do finally purchase your RV, then one of the first things you want to do after cleaning it up, I'm sure, because especially as women, we just want it all clean before we even get into it. But there are things like sealing the roof and making sure, again, anything on the outside that is not in good repair is repaired. Now, before you can have your RV towed to its location, you got to figure out where you're going to live. And there's some pros and cons to living both on your own property, on somebody else's property, or at an RV park. And while homes, especially rentals, are going up, so are the RV parks. So you do need to do your due diligence and find out about any kind of park in your area that you want to live in, and what are the accommodations that come with your rental space. In most cases, water and sewage comes with the rental space, as well as garbage pickup. However, your electricity is usually on your own. Sometimes the rate changes between winter rates and high season rates as well. If you're a full-time resident, it might be one price or a different price than either of those. So do ask all the right questions. Ask if there's any kind of deposit. Also ask about what your space allows for you. So for instance, when you live in an RV, you're not going to have as much storage as you probably had in your home. And so can you have outside storage containers? Can you have lawn furniture? Can you have a deck? What are the things that you are allowed and the things that you're not allowed to have? Can you have a pet? What kind of pets can you have? How big of pets can you have? So think about all those questions, kind of in that case, like if you were going to be renting an apartment, because you would have some of the same types of questions there. Once you decide where you're going to have your RV towed, then it's all a matter of getting it set up. Now, especially if you have never been camping by yourself, then you probably aren't going to know all of the ins and outs as far as getting your water connected, your sewage connected, your electricity connected, and then what type of weatherizing might you need in your area. Maybe if you live in Florida, you want to have some kind of a barrier around the bottom of your RV, and you can actually use it for storage and all kinds of stuff. But if you live anywhere where it gets really cold, then you're going to want to have a thicker skirting, and you're going to want to consider some kind of heating system to make sure that your tanks don't freeze, and for sure a heated water hose that won't freeze during the winter. Living in an RV, your everyday routines are pretty much the same as if you were living in a home, a traditional home or an apartment. However, there are a few things that you do want to consider as well. And that is dumping the gray and black tanks. And then how do you add the chemical in afterwards? What do you need to do to balance that for, the next week or however long until the next time you have to dump it? Depending on the type of RV you have, the sewage system you have, there might be some changes in your purchasing habits. Like maybe now you have to purchase the RV type toilet paper rather than the regular toilet paper. What about washing clothes? Will you have room in your RV for a washer and dryer? And what type will it be? It might be a very different type of washing system than you had in your home. Or maybe you're going to have to be somebody that goes to the laundromat now instead of doing it conveniently in your home. And there are a few safety measures that you want to consider too if you want to be a solo, especially female, living alone in an RV. And that is where it's going to be located at and how you need to conduct yourself in either of those locations. So for instance, if you decide you want to live on private land, whether it's yours or somebody else's, well, what is that going to look like? How much of that space is going to be allotted to you, and how are you going to use that? There are things like making sure there's enough lighting and that you have your home secured, and that, this, again, the same kinds of safety measures you would have living alone in an apartment or in a home, you'd want to consider out there as well. But because you are in a smaller type, maybe away from other people, just a little extra precautions are always good to think about. On the contrary, if you're living in an RV park, you have different neighbors around you, and it's the same kind of safety measures you would have if you were living in a community area. But here you have an opportunity to make some friends and have some neighbors that you wouldn't have if you were living out someplace more alone or in a secluded area. And in this case, I believe it would be helpful because you would have people that you could ask questions about. Now, you can't rely on them to take care of your RV for you, but having them there as a sounding board, as resources for information, could be a really great benefit for you. So that's a really short synopsis of some things to think about if you want to live solo in an RV full time. Also remember that just because you're downsizing doesn't mean your bills are all going to downsize as well. You can be very frugal, and why not? You need to do that at this season in life, if you will. But on the other hand, you are going to have a few different expenses, and sometimes the repairs on an RV, especially the appliances and things like that, are much more expensive than they are when they in your home, in a bricks and mortar home. So do consider that as well, and make appropriate types of savings available to you so that you can live your best life in this season in your RV. We hope you enjoyed today's video and that you got a couple good ideas. If you liked it, would you please do us the favor of liking and subscribing? Thanks. Until next time, bye-bye.